I've actually been awake since 4 a.m. in the morning, and I thought, what better idea than to film a couple of videos that will hopefully bring you a lot of new info about life in Switzerland and how to get here. So many of you have asked me the same question again and again. How do we go about finding an internship as a doctor or a medical student in Switzerland? In this video, we're going to go through the step-by-step method to get that dreamy internship in the Alps. You can thank me later. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Sarah. I graduated from King's in London and moved to Switzerland, where I'm currently working as an internal medicine resident. On this channel, I share my experience working as a doctor in Switzerland currently, and hopefully answer as many questions as I can to get you to your dream doctor job, and hopefully help as many of you along the way as possible. So before we get into the nitty-gritty, practical step-by-step method of how you get the medical internship, first things first, who is this video actually for? This video is for you if you're a medical student that's looking to do their residency program in Switzerland, so postgrad training, but you're not there yet. So this is more like market research phase for you. The second option is if you're a medical doctor who's currently in their residency training program in another country and want to move to Switzerland. And in that scenario, you've either got your medical degree recognized already with Mibiko, or you've not started the process of getting your medical degree recognized, and you want to do those two things in parallel. So finding a medical internship and applying to get your medical degree recognized. So those are three different scenarios, but this video applies to all of them. If you want to know more about how to get your medical degree recognized, there's a bunch of videos on my channel and more coming detailing exactly that. I'll put a few links down below. Next point is to just define terms that we're using. So when I say medical internship, another term you can hear being used is guest doctor. It's essentially a very vague term that describes any medical post that can be training or non-training. It can also be paid or unpaid. There's a lot of variety, and the steps that I'm going to go through in this video applies to all of them. To give you an idea, typically what you can imagine, people will get a medical internship for a couple of months. Sometimes it's going to be predefined, so let's say 2 months or 3 months, and that kind of gives you a buffer time to look for residency training programs. So when you hear people say that they've worked as a guest doctor in Switzerland, it doesn't mean that they've got their medical degree recognized, and it doesn't mean that it's a paid job, but most of the time it is. The point is, there's a lot of confusion out there, and the key of this video is a practical step-by-step approach to get a work placement in Switzerland. I'm not giving you tailored tips to your specific context as to how to get the best job in the best hospital of your choice. There's nothing wrong with that, and I can only encourage you to aim for that. But the aim of this video is to get 100% of you to get your first work placement in Switzerland. That's a foot in the door, and then we can make it fancy and talk about the rest. And if you're thinking, I'm not interested in being a guest doctor or having an internship, I want you to remember is it's the absolute easiest and best way to get a residency training post. Okay, so we've talked about who this is for. Now, what are the key things that you need to know in this process? Number one, as I've mentioned in a couple of other videos, time is key. Time is of the essence. As soon as you finish watching this video, if you start the process and get the ball rolling, you're increasing your chances astronomically because time is against you. Switzerland is a small country. There's a lot of people who are interested in moving here, and it's definitely possible. Number two, start learning one of the Swiss languages now. So whether that's Italian, German, or French, getting started now is the best thing you can do. Like some advice about how to practically focus on the medical language learning, which is a completely different ballgame to the day-to-day language speaking skills. Let me know in the comments down below, or you can always reach out by email or Instagram so that I can share more resources and tips. The third and final thing you need to know before we get to the nitty-gritty is that pretty much the hardest thing you're going to do in your journey moving to Switzerland as a doctor is going to be getting this internship. Once you've got this internship, it's a foot in the door, and you will see that a lot of things will get easier, because once you're there, first of all, you've got your colleagues around you, so they're going to give you practical advice as to how to get your next jobs and how to get your medical degree recognized, because a lot of them will have gone through the process before you. If you do a decent job, you're very likely to get a residency training post in that same hospital once you finish that internship. It'll be the perfect opportunity for networking and contact, and it's not a guarantee that you'll get another job straight after it, but the likelihoods of getting it are so much higher than if you just sent in an email from abroad and not been there and not done the internship. Yes, it's going to take some work, and yes, it's going to be difficult, but honestly, this is one of the biggest steps you're going to take in the whole process. Okay, we set the context, we've set the ground rules. Now let's talk about the actual process. So there's a 4-step process that you can go through to get that first internship in Switzerland. Number one is going to be your non-negotiable. Now this is going to narrow your scope of choice, so try and limit it to one. That's why I'd rather say one non-negotiable rather than what are your non-negotiables. What I mean by this is what are the things that you absolutely cannot sacrifice. So let's say, for example, you have a spouse in a certain location and it's really important for you to be in that certain radius of the country. Another big limitation would be you absolutely don't want to ever consider learning German, and you're willing to learn French, and therefore you want to limit yourself to that part of the country. If there's a place you've dreamed of living in Switzerland since you were a kid and you absolutely don't want to try anywhere else, again, that could be a non-negotiable. I would advise you to really narrow that down and make sure that it's an absolute non-negotiable, because the thing you need to know about internships is that the limiting factor is going to be the volume of your applications. So remember, we're not trying to be fancy here. We're not trying to find the best residency training program in the best part of Switzerland. We're trying to get a foot in the door. For that, we can't be too picky. So ideally, if you don't have non-negotiables, the volume of applications that you can send will be so much more than a person who's very limited to a certain area of the country where there's only a couple of hospitals and clinics. If you're a medical student or a doctor, there's no real reason why you shouldn't be able to get an internship in Switzerland. The limiting factors will be knowledge, so how to actually do it, which this video should solve, and volume of applications. If you've not applied to enough places for long enough, you might just not get the internship. It's as simple as that. And it's a patience game, it's an effort game, and like I said, this is the hardest step in your Swiss doctor journey. So it's worth putting in that effort. Step number 2 is gathering information. This is the detective section. So some might find it fun. I kind of enjoyed it, and others might find it very tedious, because you're gathering information about hospitals, you're finding email addresses of the consultants and head of departments to give yourself the best chances for your application to be seen by somebody that matters. So concretely, what you're actually going to do is head to a search engine, go to the map section, and just Google hospitals in Switzerland. We're going to apply your non-negotiable onto that map. So let's say we're focusing on the French speaking side. You already know you're going to be limited to a certain area. So that rules out a bunch of hospitals. We're going to do the exact same thing, typing in clinics in Switzerland. Get ready to have lots of tabs open. Once you've found that geographical area that you're open to working in and all the hospitals and clinics, you're just going to open a tab for each of the websites. Once you've got the websites open, you're going to do the obvious thing. You go to the job offers section of the website and see if there's anything actually on offer. Now, because this is a very practical, hands-based approach, we're doing obvious things first and then more complicated things later. So if there's a job offer that you're interested in, apply. And we're going to talk about how in the third step. I'm not going to stop here though, because most of the internships that we're interested in aren't actually on display. We have to just ask for them. So that's what we call spontaneous applications. And they're very expected and normalized, and everybody does them in Switzerland, whether it be for training posts or for internships. So once you've looked at the job offer, we're going to try and find 3 contacts. First, and the most simple, is HR. So they usually have that very accessible on the website. The next email address that you're going to try and find is the head of the department or the consultant, or basically the most senior person of the department that you want to work in. You might have to do an extra Google search with their full name to find the email address, and most of the time you will be able to find it. If you can't, the third option is to find an email of a senior supervisor attending, basically the second in command, and they're going to be your access to the boss. Bear in mind, we're not looking for training posts, so we don't care if they're recognized by the ESFM or not. We just want our foot in the door and our first job in Switzerland, ideally paid. So now you've gone through step 1, which was to identify your non-negotiables. You've done step 2, which is collate all the information. You've got all the email addresses that you need from a high volume. So this is hospitals and clinics that you could potentially work in. Number 3 is getting your paperwork ready. So when you apply for an internship, there are some base things that you absolutely need to send in your email. There's no point sending a large volume of applications if you don't have these things. They're just not going to reply to you because it's a lazy request. It's not a proper application. And these are the things that you need to include in your email. Number 1 is going to be your medical degree. If you're doing a master's currently, or you're still a medical student and don't have your medical degree, provide the most recent proof of medical education. Number 2 is going to be your ID. Pretty standard, but you absolutely need to include that. And so many people forget this step. Number 3 is going to be your CV. And I know a lot of us have a really old CV that we haven't updated in the last 5 years, but this is really key in your applications. When I say that one of the hardest parts of this journey to being a doctor in Switzerland is going to be the first medical internship, also because you have to get all the paperwork sorted. And once it's sorted, you can use it for your residency training programs, etc., etc. It's really worth taking the time, sitting down and sprucing up your CV. If you don't know where to start and you don't know what it should look like in Switzerland, drop me a comment down below or send me an email and I will try and help as best I can. Okay, so these are the 3 key things you need to have in your email when you're applying for the internship. The 2 other, I would say, bonus things, as in it's almost a requirement, but some places won't necessarily ask for it. But if you're watching this video and you're really keen to get your medical internship, include these 2 things. It takes a little extra time, but it's worth so much more. And the likelihood of you getting your internship is definitely much higher. These 2 things are your cover letter and recommendation letters. The letter doesn't need to be as detailed and as complicated as you might think. And you can do a pretty generic cover letter. There's lots of different ways where you can spruce it up and personalize it to different hospitals and clinics without having to change it for every single application. Recommendation letters, now that's a big thing in Switzerland. Whenever you apply for a training program, they ask you for them. And because it's such a small country and a lot of the consultants and professors and hospitals know each other, it does really matter what they say about you. Generally speaking, they'll say good things about you. There is a lot of importance placed on it. Now, obviously, in this case, because it's an internship and because you've never worked in Switzerland, it doesn't have the same weight. I know not everyone will have this, especially if you're a medical student, but if you do have work experience in another country and you've gotten recommendation letters, definitely include a couple in that email because it speaks to the Swiss way of doing things and it's definitely an extra little boost to get you that internship. Hang on, we're getting to the 4th step. So you've identified your non-negotiables, gathered all the information that you need to apply, you've prepared all your documentation, and now we're at the final step of the process, which is applying. What you're going to do is you've got your list of email addresses. You're not going to do a group email and send it out automatically to all of them because it's going to be too impersonal. You can try. I don't recommend it. Advisors, name the person that you're writing to in each email. Yes, it's simple. Yes, it might seem obvious, but the simple act of just naming them at the start of the email makes you stand out from a bunch of other applications who are just focusing on volume, which we said is important, but it has to be smart volume. It has to be slightly personalized. Otherwise, it's just not going to hit the mark. After that, just write a very short, succinct email saying who you are in a line and what you'd like to do, which is the medical internship or being a guest doctor for a couple of months. If you're in the process of getting your medical degree recognized, I would also mention that because that's something they're definitely going to ask you, but it's not a prerequisite. Those short few lines, you can copy paste those in all your emails. You don't need to personalize the email itself, but who you're addressing it to, I would definitely change and make sure you've attached all the documentation to each email because that's something people might easily forget as well. Once you've sent out a large volume of personalized emails to all the hospitals and clinics where you could possibly get an internship, you're going to do that again after 3 months. You're not going to harass them every single week. If you don't get a reply or even if you get a negative response, it's always worth sending out another email 3 months later. The turnover is pretty high in Switzerland and there's a multitude of reasons as to why a clinic or a hospital would suddenly need a guest doctor when they didn't need them a couple of months ago. Maternity leave, people going off sick, them opening up new departments, doctors cancelling their job contracts or just changing their mind and going to different hospitals. There's always positions that are opening up. It's really worth following up on that and not giving up after the first rejection. That's literally how I got my first job and my medical training post in a bigger hospital. So don't underestimate the power of simply asking again. And there we have it. That was the 4-step method to getting a medical internship in Switzerland. Remember, start early, volume load, and personalize a little bit. If you follow these steps, there's absolutely no reason why you shouldn't be able to get an internship. If things aren't working out, ask yourself the question, have I applied to enough places? Have I waited enough time? And have I personalized enough? If you can't quite figure out the problem and it's still not working out, feel free to reach out to me and I will try my best to help you get that internship. I hope this gets your foot through the door and one step closer to getting your training post. Have a wonderful day and I will see you in the next video. Bye.